Welcome back to OpenLine, everyone. We have with us Dr. John Weil, a political science professor at MTSU. We're talking about what happened on January 6th, the January 6th hearings that have been taking place, and been playing clips. We've been playing clips from those hearings throughout the course of the evening. I want to play one last clip. This is another 3-minute clip. It's from Representative Stephanie Murphy, and she's talking about how Trump relentlessly tried to remain in power. So let's look at this clip, about 3 minutes long.
Following the election, President Trump relentlessly pursued multiple interlocking lines of effort, all with a single goal: to remain in power despite having lost. The lines of effort were aimed at his loyal Vice President, Mike Pence, at state election and elected officials, and at the U.S. Department of Justice. The president pressured the vice president to obstruct the process to certify the election result. He demanded that state officials find him enough votes to overturn the election outcome in that state, and he pressed the Department of Justice to find widespread evidence of fraud. When justice officials told the president that such evidence did not exist, the president urged them to simply declare that the election was corrupt. On December 14th, the Electoral College met to officially confirm that Joe Biden would be the next president. The evidence shows that once this occurred, President Trump and those who were willing to aid and abet him turned their attention to the joint session of Congress scheduled for January 6th, at which the vice president would preside. In their warped view, this ceremonial event was the next, and perhaps the last, inflection point that could be used to reverse the outcome of the election before Mr. Biden's inauguration. As President Trump put it, the vice president and enough members of Congress simply needed to summon the courage to act. To help them find that courage, the president called for backup. Early in the morning of December 19th,
in the craziest meeting of the Trump presidency, the outside lawyers who'd been involved in dozens of failed lawsuits had lots of theories supporting the big lie, but no evidence to support it. As we will see, however, they brought to the White House a draft executive order that they had prepared for President Trump to further his ends. Specifically, they proposed the immediate mass seizure of state election machines by the U.S. military. The meeting ended after midnight with apparent rejection of that idea. In the wee hours of December 19th, dissatisfied with his options, Donald Trump decided to call for a large and wild crowd on Wednesday, January 6th, the day when Congress would meet to certify the electoral votes. Never before in American history had a president called for a crowd to come contest the counting of electoral votes by Congress, or engaged in any effort designed to influence, delay, or obstruct the joint session of Congress in doing its work required by our Constitution and the Electoral Count Act. As we'll see, Donald Trump's 1:42 a.m. tweet electrified and galvanized.
So there was mention of that explosive meeting on December 18th that the committee is saying was a turning point. And right after that, Trump sent out that tweet and telling people to gather on January 6th. When you hear those, what are your thoughts, and kind of put that in perspective for us?
Well, you know, we talked about checks and balances before. And, you know, there's been a lot of criticism of the deep state, or the so-called deep state, that, you know, people are so grounded there that no matter what the people want, they're going to do it. Well, in this case, the deep state saved America. Mike Pence, who was almost a sycophant throughout the Trump years, stepped up and said, no, I will not do wrong. There are indications that the military, I doubt that the military would have been willing to seize ballots even if they had been ordered to do so. Members of the Justice Department said they were going to resign en masse if the president carried through what he did. And so he did eventually. You know, the only alternative left was to agree to the results of a legitimate election or to try to counter them by force. And he chose the latter option.
Wow, that's a good point. What are you going to be looking for in this last hearing, which will be in prime time? It's going to come up later this month. What will you be looking for?
Well, one thing I'd love to find out is who was it that the president apparently called and the person wouldn't take his phone call for fear of intimidation or trying to get him to perjure himself. So I'd like to know that. You know, I wouldn't be absolutely sure that this will be the last one. One of the fascinating things about the committee hearings is, you know, it's a little bit like the Butterfield moment during the Watergate hearings when somebody says, by the way, you know, did you know that the president has recorded all the conversations in the Oval Office? And it's quite possible that there's, you know, probably not an identical bombshell, but that somebody else is going to step forward. I think this, you know, woman who stepped forward at the last hearing really inspired a lot of people to say, you know, if an aide to Mark Meadows can step forward, then maybe I have an obligation to do the same thing.
And as a political science professor, when you come on, I'm often just talking politics with you. We're talking about this election or that election. And it's a very common question for me to ask you, who do you think will run for president? So we have 30 seconds left. Do you think Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee?
I don't. I think it's quite possible, but there may be a mini Trump or a pseudo Trump or a substitute. You know, it may be that the lesson that the Republicans have learned is you need somebody with a little bit more panache than Donald Trump to pursue the same policies.
It'll be interesting.
And I wouldn't absolutely be certain that Biden's going to be the Democratic nominee.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, thank you so much. Dr. John Weil, thank you for coming on. We'll take a break. I'll come back and wrap everything up right after this.